Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a really modern problem, one that comes from the book, The 21st Century Missional Disciple. And the central question is this: in a world that has so much to offer, why do so many of us feel like something huge is missing, like we've lost our sense of purpose?
You know, the author David Dung starts with this incredible observation. He's looking at his students, and they are completely hooked on the manga One Piece. They're lit up by its epic adventure, its high stakes, this grand quest. But then he looks at their actual lives, and that fire, that passion, just isn't there. It's replaced by this apathy. And that gap, right there, between the stories we love and the lives we live, that's what we're going to unpack.
Because this really gets to the heart of the paradox of our time. On one hand, we have material abundance. We have more stuff, more comfort, more technology than any other time in history. But on the other hand, there's this growing scarcity of meaning. A lot of us feel like we're just adrift, floating without a map or a destination. So how in the world did we get here? Well, this meaning crisis didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It actually has some really deep historical roots that have totally changed the way we even think about finding purpose in the first place. It's a story that unfolds over centuries. Back in the 16th century, the scientific revolution started to separate cold, hard facts from personal values. Then the Enlightenment came along and put humanity, not God, right at the center of everything. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we learn to build our identities around what we could buy. And all of that leads us right here to what the philosopher Charles Taylor calls the age of authenticity, where the main goal is just to be true to yourself, which really means you're on your own to invent your purpose from scratch. And wow, the pressure that creates is just immense. This idea that it's all on you, that you have to create your own meaning, your own value, it's a trap. It's a recipe for anxiety, for feeling totally unstable because you're on this hamster wheel of constantly having to prove you're good enough. And as the book says, that is just a dead end. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, isn't religion supposed to be the answer to all this? Isn't that where you find meaning? And that's a great question. But the argument here is that for a lot of people, faith itself has been, shrunk. It's been made smaller into something that just can't carry the weight of our need for a real, robust purpose. There's actually a term for this: moralistic therapeutic deism. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. It's a version of faith where God is basically a cosmic therapist or a divine butler. He's there to help us be nice people, to make us feel happy, and to fix our problems when we call. But he's not really involved in our lives. He doesn't give us a grand mission or a purpose that's bigger than just our own personal well-being. And when that happens, you get this. The gospel gets shrunk down to just two things: going to church on Sunday and getting into heaven when you die. It gets completely disconnected from our actual lives, our jobs, our struggles, our desire to see justice in the world. And honestly, when that happens, it starts to feel pretty relevant. And the numbers? Well, they tell the story. This shrunken down faith is just not connecting, especially with younger people. We're seeing a massive cross-generational challenge. Get this, the source material points out that for Chinese American youth, as many as 90% who grow up in the church end up leaving it. 90%. That's huge. Okay, so if that's the problem, a meaning crisis in the world and a shrink in faith in the church, what's the way out? The book proposes a really powerful new framework, a different way to think about a life of purpose. And at the heart of it is this idea of the missional disciple. Now, this isn't some new church program. It's a complete reframing of your life. It weaves together three things. First, it starts with mission, not our mission, but God's grand story for the whole world. Second, it gets real about culture, the specific time and place we live in. And third, it's about being a disciple, finding our unique identity and calling within that bigger story. Now, this is the crucial point. For a long time, we've acted like you have to choose. Are you focused on your personal growth as a disciple, or are you focused on mission out in the world? But the book argues that's a false choice. If the God you follow is a missional God, a God who is actively at work redeeming the world, then to follow him is to be on mission. They aren't two different things. They're the exact same thing.
That all sounds amazing, right? But what does that actually look like day to day? How do you live this out in our messy, complicated, pluralistic world?
Well, first we have to reject two common traps. The book uses these great Chinese phrases for them. The first is to withdraw, to retreat from the world into a holy huddle and just protect ourselves. The other extreme is to try and conquer, to wage a culture war and try to dominate society. Both of these, the book says, miss the point entirely.
So instead of picking a side, the idea is to integrate. It draws on this concept of a deep church. You see, some approaches focus almost entirely on individual salvation, but they can ignore the call to social justice. Others focus so much on social justice, they can forget about the need for personal transformation. A missional approach says no, it's both. It's one holistic mission.
And living this integrated life means you're right in the thick of it, navigating the big challenges of our time. There's the cross-generational challenge of bridging the gap between young and old, the cross-boundary challenge of breaking down that wall between faith and the rest of your life, and the cross-cultural challenge of engaging a really diverse world with both love and wisdom. So at the end of the day, this all builds to a really powerful conclusion. This isn't just a new way to do church. It's a totally different answer to that universal human question. How do I find a life that matters? And to really get this idea, the book tells this amazing story. There's a monk, and he's stuck in an impossible chess game he can't win. So what does he do? He doesn't try to outmaneuver his opponent. He sacrifices his own pieces. It looks like he's losing, but by giving them up, he completely changes the game and opens a new path to victory. And that's the metaphor. Purpose isn't found by fighting for your own position, but by yielding to a bigger story. So this flips the script. Instead of the exhausting pressure of trying to invent a meaningful life for ourselves, we find meaning by discovering our part in a story that's already being told, a story that is so much bigger than us. We find our purpose not as authors, but as vital characters who are both created and called. And that really leaves us with one final thought to take away. This whole idea changes the question. It's no longer what meaning can I invent for myself. Instead, the question becomes, what grand story is my life a part of? So as we wrap up, the thing to really think about is this. What story is your life telling?